Hi friends, just Christina here. Welcome back to my channel. And today I want to share with you the first book and the first little tidbits of research that I inherited from my mom. She passed away December 5th, 2017 after a very long battle with multiple complications. She had a pacemaker sitting on the outside of her neck for 10 days because she had a blood infection that she got from a transfusion. And they had to clear that up before they could put the pacemaker in her heart. She got out, her kidneys failed, and ultimately she passed away in the hospital. So it was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. And after she passed away, I started binge watching YouTube, and I had never really given much time to YouTube because I've been in school for the past 10 years. And literally since 2009, I've been devoting all of my spare time to my studies. And so when she passed away, I really needed something to just occupy my mind. And I started making quilts at that time, and I make quilts for friends and I just give them away. So anyway, I was watching YouTube videos and I started out with just like silly, scary stories. And I think I came across Secure Team 10 and I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to find something with more substance. And then I found Richie from Boston. And starting to listen to what he was saying reminded me of a lot of the things that I heard from my mom when I was growing up. So when I was very, very little, she was part of a group that was protesting the barcodes and the universal product system. And I think she just knew her whole life about big government and what was going on. So before we get really started into this, you need to know that I have a very strong military family background. Both of my grandfathers were in the military for their whole life, until they retired later on in life. And one of my grandfathers, there's even a book about him. It's A Hill Called Whitehorse. And my other grandfather participated in the atomic testing in the Nevada test site region, and he eventually died from health complications from those tests. A lifetime of health complications before it finally ended his life. So my father was in the Navy, and later on he went to go work in a lumber mill. And my mom, being the very educated woman that she was, her uncle was in the FBI. My husband's father first he started out as a Marine, and then he spent 26 years in the Air Force. His father was in the Marines, and then he joined the CIA. So we have a very strong, intense military background. And with my background and my scientific belief system, I guess you could say, I always had that mentality that if it's not scientific and you can't use the scientific method to reproduce the results, then I don't buy it. I need proof. You need to show me. You need to allow me to use the scientific method to ensure that what you're saying is true. So going through my mom's research really just blew my mind. So backtracking to what I was saying, when I was watching the videos of Richie from Boston, I started getting these other recommendations of channels, and eventually I share my channel list. I share who I subscribe to because I think it's important. And I think a lot of the information that people are putting out there are tidbits. They're just a little bit from this subject matter or a little bit from that subject matter. But I think if we collectively pool all of this knowledge together, it is going to start making so much more sense. So the first book that I want to share with you, this is a pamphlet that came out. The foreword was written in 1978, and I guess it took them a couple of years because this was actually published in 1980. So I was only a few years old when this happened. And it's called The Mark is Ready, Are You? By Ron Steele. And so my mother's third husband, yes, she had a few husbands. Her third husband he was in the Army, and then later on in life, he actually retired, but he had a 700-acre farm. And I remember hearing stories about how the government would come in and tell him to set fire to his crops that year because they wanted to control the agricultural output. And I guess it wasn't uncommon for them to just pay off farmers to burn their crops. But all of this coincides with everything that I'm going to share with you. So here is some of my mom's research here, and we'll be going through all of that. But there's a lot of pamphlets like this and books and stuff from the 80s. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into this. The mark is ready. Are you? Oh, so, okay, backtrack. The reason that I told you about my grandfather, who was a farmer, he also had a lot of livestock on his farm. It wasn't a ranch, it was a full-fledged farm, but he had chickens and goats and just the basics. Well, this guy here, Keith Farrell, he was a Washington State University professor in Pullman, Washington, and he was a researcher. Well, Keith Farrell designed this amazing and pretty scary machine. And his dream was to have a classification system for all of the animals on the planet. And so he designed this tattoo laser machine here. And he had actually used it on himself twice. And what had happened is he put it under his skin, and you couldn't see it. It was the laser tattoo under his hand, but it was in this format. So we'll get into this. I can't remember exactly what these all stand for, but it's like, this is the region, this is the genus classification, speciation, the sex of the animal, male or female. And there's some more things that go with it too. But this is what essentially it looks like. So it's layered. There's two squares, two black boxes layered on top of each other. Okay, and as you can see, Dr. Farrell says, I suppose that the principles that work for one will work for any animal. I have physically tried to establish programs that could number all of the animals in the world, and in theory, I guess it's possible that man could be included in that. So essentially, they're saying that man is an animal that could also be classified with his tattooing system. Now, Ackerman and the Probe was a radio interview program that they went on every 6 months to update these studies. And this is a transcription of one of the radio interviews, and you can see key officials at Asan in connection with the animal satellite tracking program that makes it possible to monitor elk, polar bear, porpoise, sea turtle, blah, 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 blah. It's underway at the Los Alamos Scientific Research Laboratory. It's paying to have all the most valuable livestock identified by computer-compatible electronic implants called transponders. This device, I understand, is capable of identifying 1 million billion animals. That's like Austin Powers, 1 million billion animals. So anyway, we can go through this later on. They're saying that it's harmless. And this is the interview between Dr. Farrell and the radio host, Ackerman, and he's going through. So this actually, my mom went through and she underlined some things and she highlighted some things that she found important for her own research. But there's something else that I want to show you back in here. So I had mentioned that satellite system, and this is the late 70s that they had theorized and postulated that they could have a satellite that would track anyone, anywhere on the planet. And so let's go through this here, because it says that any tracking device that is planted in, so there's actually 3 different classifications. So there's the invisible tattoo, the laser tattoo. There's a tracking device, and let's get to the third one here. The tattooing, that's what it was. So they were doing a dog registry where they were doing lip tattoos in animals to be able to, I know, how cruel is that, right? The National Dog Registry tattooed dogs. And what they wanted to do was, It was actually implemented by the United States government, saying that there are so many dogs getting stolen today, and it's in your own best interest to tattoo the lip of your canine. And so they had all these special tattooing, electric tattooing markers. And look at this, they were even tattooing on frogs back in the day. Here they are holding down an animal, giving it a tattoo. Like, to me, if one of the, like PETA saw this and stepped in, they'd be like, hell no, that is cruelty to animals. So you can see here, the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals argued in its favor and said that there are too many things that can be said to respect the Operation Tattoo, which is bearing dividends at this present time. Should you require any further information, don't hesitate to give me a ring. See Jack Holmes, Secretary Manager of the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Operation Tattoo. So tattooing was just one of the 3 parts of the classification system. Here's one, Multnomah County, Oregon. They did that at the shelter there. So the Animal Title Association. Okay, so they not only did this with dogs, but they wanted to have a national horse registry. So you can see here, for the fee of pet tattooing, it was $10. So it only cost you $10 to go get your dog tattooed, and everyone thought it was this super great way to make sure that your animals weren't stolen. So here you can see horse tattooed on the neck, dogs and cats are tattooed on the inside of the right leg. And I know in the beginning they did it on the lips, the inside of the lip, but then later on they decided that they needed a universal location in animals. So they moved it because, having a lip tattoo, having any kind of tattoo you have to take care of, but can you imagine a lip tattoo on the inside of a dog's mouth getting infected? How awful is that? I wouldn't do that to my dog. My dog is my baby. So, okay, moving forward. Look, freeze branding. Part 4, lip tattooing and laser marking. And this is the professor, Keith Farrell from WSU. Now, there's an interesting story here, and I want to show you his obituary also, because he was 54 years old. He was a very well-loved and well-respected veterinary professor at Washington State University, and he was a researcher. But he was on his way to a convention in Las Vegas, and he died mysteriously. Well, nobody knows to this day exactly what happened, but curiously enough, after he had passed away, they went into his laboratory at WSU. They took all of his research data, and this fancy little machine here that I showed you in the beginning came up missing. So who do you think took that? Well, I'll give you one guess, and you're probably right. And it wasn't the professors or the dean of the university by any means. So a dog's best friend is a registry. No, a dog's best friend is its owner. So if you just keep the gate closed, I think you'll be fine. So we've seen all of this tattooing. Okay, and here's some really horrible, horrifying pictures that shows what they've done. So aside from the tattooing, they moved on to the laser marking system. All right, here we go. This is a good explanation. And that's his coding. So an interview from 1976. All right, so that's, that just goes on for more personal interviews. Some shots of the lab. Now here's the horse registry. And they wanted to have this nationwide, and they wanted to make every animal, see even here, the USDA wants you to identify all sows and boars. And so any pork producer, markets, and packers identify all sows and boars in the slaughterhouse. Well, if you're going to kill them, why do you need to tattoo them? Tattoo iron inserts. And they used to just brand cattle. They used to just get the branding iron and get it hot. And so now they're doing this freeze marking, and they actually contracted out to mark all of these cattle, and they would go out into the fields and they would use this freeze system. Okay, moving forward. I know this is getting kind of long, but bear with me. We're almost done here, okay? Applied in less than 30 seconds. Then they introduced the tagging system because not everybody wanted to go and tattoo or freeze brand their animals. So the ear notcher, basically a hole punch for your animal's ear, and then you insert this tracking tag, the ear tag applicator, and you pierce your cow's ear, or poultry, or turkey, or game birds. There's all different tags for all different kinds of animals. They have leg and wing bands, poultry and turkey supplies, fish and small, large animal supplies. Now in brilliant anodized colors. So you kind of see these at the vet nowadays. And you go in and you pay the money to register your dog or your cat, and they give you these tags that they have to wear, and it's a classification system. So here we go. Here's Dr. Keith Farrell again, and his dream was to have every single animal on the entire planet documented. He wanted a clear account of how many animals there were. Now, this would be an ongoing project, right? Because they're always reproducing and dying, and there's generations year after year and decade after decade. So it says these marks should be a permanent part of the animal and be exclusive to that individual. So like I said, this would mean rat. This would mean male. This would mean... Well, let's see if we can get more into it here. So the Arabic number system developed in ancient times. I apologize for not remembering all of this in detail. I've been reading a lot of her research and doing some more research on my own between chemtrails and 5G systems that I'm writing papers on right now. So all right, the alpha angle system, upright, right, inverted, left, blah, 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 blah. It says, a technician from a company specializing in freeze marking lifts a super chilled copper marking stamp from a solution of dry ice and alcohol. Horse owners were among the first to recognize the precise and humanitarian angle system for animal identification. Like, if you own that animal, don't you know that it's yours? There's no question. And I know there were cattle rustlers and all that, but this isn't the Wild West anymore. You can go to prison for stealing another man's cattle. You can get shot for stealing another man's horse. So these are certifications that you own that animal and that your animal has been freeze marked, and that it's a purebred whatever, not just Arabian horses. There's all kinds of purebred horse breeds out there that people were saying, okay, well, to prove that it is an Appaloosa, you have this specific marking, and without that, you can't prove it. So never mind that the certification papers weren't good enough back in the day. They did this. And this breaks my heart. When you're riding your horse and you see this, you should feel like an ass. Now look at this one. This is going to make you sick too. This is one they were just testing on. It's gross, isn't it? These poor horses. The Jockey Club Universal System of Horse Identification, they used it. Tattooing and branding of thoroughbreds. And they still do this today, I know. They'll go and they'll brand their animals and they'll say, okay, these are our animals. We've tagged the cow's ears and it's for counts and it's for vaccination purposes. But I think this takes it to an extreme, don't you? tagging fish, tagging wildlife. Okay, now we're getting into some more things. So the Animal and Human Name Association. This is something that they broke down in this book that's actually pretty cool. So they're talking about how animal names are associated in everything that we do. And we essentially ourselves are animals and we relate to animals. So look at all these different things that they throw in the mix of animal names. So the rams and the lions and the bears and the colts and the eagles, and tigers, all of these names are associated with animals, okay? Comics, music, evolution, epithets, tribes, organizations, and mythology. All right, so this identification section talks about the identification of humans and federal ID cards. So this was the introduction of the Social Security system, where we had to have identity cards. And you can see there was a huge opposition back in the day to the identity cards. And people were saying that there was a lot of fraud at the passport office. So we need to register all citizens issuing a fingerprint ID card. Okay. And we had alien registry cards. You were given a number. You were a resident alien. If you came here and you didn't have your citizenship, you were still classified and documented. So the ID card system was also designed. Your Uncle Samuel computer is coming. Now this talks about the registry system as many as 40 years ago. Electronic gates, phrase branding, the automatic feeding system that gives animals individual attention. So this is really the era when all of this commercialization of equipment comes into play. So they're talking about automatic feeding systems, automatic milking systems. Visit the dairy farm in the year 2001. This is kind of funny because this is from 1979. So they're saying 20 years from then, which we know was 18 years ago. It says, relax, I'll handle everything. The old homestead. Okay, great grandma never had it like this. First floor, milking computers. Well, the problem that I have with that is you cannot use a computer to identify disease in your animals. You're just automatically dosing them, which I guess they do now anyway. So here's the story of electronic cows and how cows will be governed by the electronic watchdog that will essentially help farmers. It's just ridiculous. There's so much. And I think what we need to do is go through this section by section. And we'll be doing 5 different sections to get through it. The Swedish experience in horse identification. It is increasing a worldwide scope. So it says, people look at the present marks on horses in an odd manner. The usual feeling is that it is an ugly thing and shouldn't be on the horse, but I can remember some strange things occurring when the program was started. And if it works for the animal, the horse, then some of these principles might work on a human per se. I don't know. When the freeze marking program for horse racing was started in New Zealand, there was a great deal of public cry that this was mutilating the horse in one way or another. However, shortly thereafter, the insurance companies would not insure a horse until it was marked. Banks would not loan money on the horse until it was marked. The voluntary program seemed to materialize with the most expensive horses. It wasn't before long that the marks came to have an aura of something better than average, and suddenly it became rather well accepted. Well, if you're forced to have it, if you want to have it, and you're forced to use the identification system, you kind of got your back against the wall. You know, you're kind of having it shoved down your throat, and you have no choice. So essentially, if you want to have an expensive horse and you want to get insurance on it, you don't have a choice but to get the card. So there's permanent identification cards for horses, which is ridiculous. Just be happy having your horse. Okay, the NCIC network. This is July 1977, and as you can see, the policy board regions. Let's take a look. It looks like they're largely in the capitals of the states. Here we are here in the PNW. So you can see there's a network in every state, and it's broken down by region. So this is zone 4, this is zone 3, this is zone 2, and this is zone 1. And these are the areas that you can go. They're operation terminals. So let's say somebody was up in here, they could either go here or here because they're in the same zone. You just have to go to whatever center is near you to have your animals tattooed. Now, National Information Crime Center. There was a board meeting on April 27th and 28th of 1976 in New Orleans. There were many topics considered, such as the report on NCIC staff projects, retention periods of records, NCIC property files, control terminals, and the like. Various topics came up as presented, and anyone who's interested in connecting with a network systems terminal, policy agencies, police departments, police officers, courts, anything that's pertinent to the National Crime Information Center. So this is essentially building the platform of the entire national crime database. And what they postulated was that all of the states who had all of these individual registries, like fingerprints, this would be a giant computer that housed all of this data. And essentially what it would do is it would make it possible to track you in a matter of 7 seconds. So the information on you, let's say I live here in Idaho, but if I was in Boston or New York or whatever, and I did something and they called my information up on the NCIC computers, they would have all of the information on me in a matter of 7 seconds. So there's the livestock identification board, electronic identification tags, a little article on our big brother, human transponder surveillance and command systems. And there's that satellite again. So, all right, here's another little news clipping that I'll share with you. It's an ad that my mom got out of a newspaper in 1982. And she lived in Lewiston, Idaho, which is a border town to Clarkston, Washington. It's in northern Idaho and eastern Washington. And introduces universal money. This is the first debit cards that came out. So it's just another way to track. You know, before, when you made your cash, they didn't know what store you went to, what you spent your money on. And, you know, of course, stores have club cards now to where you type in your club card and you give them all your information and they know exactly what you're buying. You use your debit card, they know how much you spent at that grocery store on that day at that time. So a social register for animals. All right, well, I think this is where we're going to stop for now. And like I said, there's certain sections here that I want to get more in depth with you on. And I'll be doing more videos based on each subsection of the tattoo registry and the ID system. So thank you so much for joining me. Just Christina signing out.